What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you some reasons why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro 5G. Now, keep in mind, as always with these videos, this is going to be a little nitpicky, and in general, despite a few drawbacks I'm going to be going over, I actually don't think this is a bad phone. But of course, like any phone, the Revvl 6 Pro definitely does have quite a few drawbacks, so I'm going to be going over some of my least favorite things about it to give you a better idea of what you can expect if you get it. Now, before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, and in case you want to learn more about this phone, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So the first reason why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro is the kind of old feeling, more low-end design. Now on one hand, I do understand that especially when it comes to more low-end devices like this, most people are not really going to be looking for aesthetics. But keep in mind, with this phone, with the slightly thicker bottom bezel and the water drop notch front-facing camera, this phone definitely has more of a generic look to it, compared to something like a OnePlus phone, for example, that despite being around the same price, does look quite a bit more premium. And while again, aesthetics and overall design really aren't a priority for a lot of people, considering there are options in this price range, they do look quite a bit nicer and more modern in my opinion. This definitely still is something to think about. My second reason why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro is the speaker quality. Now on one hand, as you're about to see, it's not really terrible, but that being said, keep in mind, this phone does not have stereo audio. So if you do like to listen to music, play games, watch videos, that kind of stuff, and you don't always want to use headphones or an external speaker, then keep in mind, compared to a phone that does have stereo audio, the sound quality you get with this phone is not going to be nearly as good. Now in case you don't know what it means, when a phone has stereo audio, that means when you're doing something like watching a video or listening to music, sound is going to come out of both the main speaker and the earpiece. But unfortunately with this phone, when you're doing that kind of stuff, you're only going to get sound from the main speaker. Now again, for a lot of people, this might not really matter a whole lot, but if you do like to consume a lot of content, then you're probably going to want a phone that at least has some sort of stereo audio, so you can have decent audio quality for when you're not using headphones. Now of course, that being said, audio quality is definitely more of a subjective thing, and what doesn't sound good to some people might actually be good enough for others. So while this microphone might not pick things up perfectly, I do still want to play this sample and give you at least somewhat of an idea of what this phone's speaker sounds like. So there you go. Maybe it sounded good to you, maybe it didn't. And again, of course, through this alone, it's probably kind of hard to tell what it actually sounds like in real life. But just keep in mind, again, if you are consuming a lot of content without headphones or an external speaker, since this phone doesn't have stereo audio, you're not really going to be getting a very immersive experience. Now, my third reason why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro is the processor. Now, don't get me wrong. If you look at this processor by itself, it's really not a bad processor. With this phone, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. And as I've said in many other videos, the MediaTek Dimensity 700 is really not a bad processor. That being said though, if you get this phone expecting amazing pro level performance, like the name of the phone might suggest, you are going to be disappointed, because while this phone is perfectly fine for basic daily activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music every now and then, and some light mobile gaming, if you're really just going to be on your phone all the time, especially if you're doing more demanding activities, then just keep in mind, while this phone is definitely fast enough for more normal use, for more of a power user, it is still going to feel a little slow. Now I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on it, and here are the scores I got. Now of course, take this with a grain of salt, because benchmark tests really aren't everything, but what I do recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and then comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a bit of a better idea of whether or not this phone's going to be an upgrade for you. But in general, again, while this is definitely not the fastest phone in the world, in this price range I really wouldn't expect it to be, and I guess for what it is, the performance is at least decent. But keep in mind, the regular T-Mobile Revvl 6 5G does have the same exact processor, so if you do get this phone over that one, expecting to see any kind of performance difference, you are most likely going to be disappointed. But in general, again, if you're just looking for a more entry-level 5G phone for more basic daily activities, then honestly the performance we're getting with this phone is still going to be perfectly fine for you. The fourth reason why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro is the display quality. Now with this phone, we are getting a really large 6.82-inch IPS LCD display with a 20.5:9 aspect ratio, so not only are we getting a larger display, but we're also getting a really tall and narrow form factor, and this is definitely a good thing too. But that being said, despite this, we're only getting a 720p resolution with a PPI of 263, and while I guess by itself it's not really a bad thing, and compared to the base Revvl 6, at least the size and dimensions are better, it definitely would have been nice to see a 1080p resolution instead. And this is especially so considering considering that in 2023, for around this price, if not maybe a little bit more, you can easily find several other phones that have 1080p resolutions. So if you're doing something like watching videos or playing games, where the actual image quality is a bit more important, then while the size and dimensions make this phone at least a decent option for that kind of thing, in general, if the image quality is a bit more important, then you can definitely do better. My fifth reason why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro is because it doesn't have any dust and water resistance. Now keep in mind, this doesn't mean it's any less durable than another phone in this price range, and honestly, this is a pretty fixable issue. But all the same, with phones like the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G for example, that do have IP68 dust and water resistance, becoming more and more affordable in 2023, if you are in a situation where you're more often exposed to dust, water, and just rough environments in general, then I feel like even though this phone isn't terrible, especially considering the price, it's not really your best option. That being said, if you do get this phone and you are going to be in that kind of environment, I definitely do recommend pairing it up with a case, because this is going to make a huge difference. My sixth reason why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro is because it can't record 4K videos. Now, on one hand, do I really expect a phone barely over $200 to be able to record 4K videos? In 2023, maybe. Maybe throughout this year, we start to see a bunch of $200 phones that can record 4K videos. At this point in time, I don't really know, but all the same, this phone can record 2K videos in the rear camera, so there is at least that. But unfortunately, if you do want to record videos in 4K, maybe you're more of a content creator or something, then you are going to have to go with a different device. And finally, my seventh reason why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro is the long-term software support. Now, keep in mind, this isn't really so much a complaint as it is just something to be aware of, because in general, phones in this price range, especially the carrier branded phones in my experience, tend to not have the best software support, and I want to say most of them don't get major updates. So when you get a phone like this, the software you start out with tends to be the one you're stuck with. Now, this phone does have Android 12, which granted really isn't that bad. At least it is decently newer. But if you were hoping for Android 13, then you are going to want to go with a different device. Now, this phone may get Android 13 in the future. I might be completely wrong about this, but in general, if having the latest version of Android is really important to you, then with this phone, although getting Android 13 at least is definitely still possible, I still really wouldn't count on it. But those were my reasons why you might not want the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro. Again, despite these drawbacks, I still really do think this is a pretty good phone for what it is. And in general, if you're looking for an entry-level 5G phone that has plenty of storage, a large display, decent performance, a large battery, and a pretty good camera setup, then honestly, you're really not going to go wrong with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro. Now again, if you want to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the video description, where I will be linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.